Google dominated the internet for over 2 decades. I mean, they were the undisputed gatekeepers of human knowledge. But today, for the very first time in its entire history, Google is not leading the AI revolution.
Someone else is leading the charge, and whoever that is, they could completely rewrite how the internet actually works. The search giant isn't just fending off pesky competitors anymore. No, they are fighting a structural war for their very survival.
So, you gotta wonder, how on earth did an untouchable giant lose its crown? Well, the answer lies in a massive paradigm shift, a shift that's literally dismantling Google's entire business model brick by brick. To truly grasp this collapse, we're going to use this explainer to look at exactly how this is playing out.
Act 1. The King of Search. You see, to understand the threat, we really have to understand the empire first. For an entire generation, Google built this absolute monopoly over how you and I find information. And they did it by engineering what we call the referral economy. It was a simple, honestly, flawless loop. They indexed the open web, you typed in a keyword, they directed your intent to a specific website, and then they monetized that interaction through cost-per-click advertising. It printed billions for them. But here is the terrifying part for Alphabet. A brand new challenger just turned this exact strength into a fatal weakness.
Act 2. The challenger. Enter OpenAI. Now, it's time to drop that whole narrative of a scrappy underdog startup. OpenAI is a heavily armed commercial juggernaut right now, backed by quite literally the deepest pockets on the planet. We're talking Amazon, SoftBank, and NVIDIA. Following a historic $122 billion funding round in March 2026, OpenAI hit a staggering valuation, $852 billion. To put that into perspective for you, they are operating on a macroeconomic scale, actively negotiating infrastructure deals that rival the GDP of small nations. That is the sheer scale of the monster knocking on Google's door.
And they are moving at a speed that honestly defies logic. Back in 2025, they sat at $4.6 billion in revenue. By December of that same year, that skyrocketed to $20 billion. And by February 2026, $25 billion. That's a revenue expansion curve 4 times faster than the very businesses that defined the early internet era. Unbelievable, right?
So how exactly are they pulling this off? Well, here is the core conflict. Traditional Google relies on keyword matching, giving you a bunch of isolated links that you have to manually click through. OpenAI's Search GPT, though, uses AI understanding to just give you a direct conversational answer. Generative AI fundamentally breaks Google's referral loop, because if it gives you the answer instantly, you never have to click away. Which brings us to Act 3, Google's trillion-dollar panic. Look, Google didn't just sit back and watch their empire burn. Obviously, they launched a frantic multi-billion-dollar counterattack to protect their crown. But the stark reality of their panic is perfectly captured in just 2 words from Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai: compute constrained. Basically, Google literally cannot build data centers and processing chips fast enough to meet the insane demand of this new AI era. Which leads us to a genuinely mind-blowing figure. $185 billion. That is Google's capital expenditure budget for 2026 alone. Think about that. This is a massive, desperate play to protect their dominance. A play so large that it even forced a cash-printing machine like Alphabet to go to the equity markets and raise $80 billion just to fund it. Just look at the terrifying growth rate in their spending. From $52.5 billion in 2024, nearly doubling to $91.4 billion in 2025, and then doubling again in 2026. Why? Because Google's network is now processing a mind-bending 2 quadrillion tokens every single month. The physical infrastructure required to handle that is entirely unprecedented. But Google does have a secret weapon up its sleeve: the hardware war. See, Google has spent a decade quietly building their own custom chips, the TPU V7 Ironwood. Because they build this stuff in-house, they get massive compute power for about 20% of the cost of their competitors. OpenAI, on the other hand, they suffer from the NVIDIA tax, paying huge markups for third-party GPUs, while simultaneously burning billions on AWS and the Stargate initiative, just to secure enough multi-cloud capacity to even stay in the fight. And because of that custom hardware, Google can aggressively undercut OpenAI on price. Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro only costs $10 per million output tokens, while OpenAI's advanced O3 Pro model sits way up at $80. But here's the lingering question you have to ask yourself. Is having cheaper compute enough to win?
if everyday people completely change how they use the internet.
Act 4. The civilian impact. So why does this high-stakes corporate chess match actually matter for you, or for businesses or content creators? Well, according to SEMrush, a staggering 93% of Google AI mode sessions result in 0 clicks to external websites. Let that sink in. 93%. This basically proves that the traditional internet is dying. Almost no one is clicking on websites anymore if the AI agent just spoon feeds them the answer right there on the search page. So if you run a business or manage a website, the rules of survival have completely changed overnight. It's no longer just about stuffing keywords into an article. To survive AI SEO, you need to master the first 200 words rule, because these AI agents extract answers immediately. Google now actively rewards deep, original, first-hand lived experience. If you are just aggregating other people's content, the AI will just bypass you entirely. But for the consumer, this shift is incredible. As Dennis Yaretz, the CTO of Perplexity AI, perfectly puts it, you can save a lot of time when you don't have to sift through 10 links and do a lot of the manual work yourself. And honestly, he hit the nail on the head. This is exactly why users are adopting AI search so rapidly, despite the absolute panic it's causing for traditional website owners. And the real-world business stakes here are vast. Just look at e-commerce. AI adoption is allowing sellers to create listings 5.2 times faster, resulting in a 41% drop in photography costs. So while Google still technically owns the actual moment you search to buy a product, OpenAI has stealthily captured all the upstream workflows. They've become the platform where all these commercial assets are actually being created in the first place. Which brings us to Act 5, the end game. The war is escalating, guys. It is no longer just a fight over search. It is a battle for absolute control over the very operating system of the future. Welcome to the interface war. On one side, Google is deploying Gemini Spark OS, aiming to be a 24/7 autonomous web assistant embedded right into your browser and your phone. But on the other side, OpenAI is deploying codecs and desktop agents, and they are actively trying to bypass the web browser entirely to control your local files and your desktop workload directly. So the ultimate takeaway of this explainer is pretty simple. The battle is no longer about who can build the largest foundation model. No, it is entirely about who controls the default user interface where your work actually happens. Whoever owns the interface captures all the high-value interactions of this whole new era. Which leaves us with this stark final question. If OpenAI successfully bypasses the browser and fully controls the interface, will the internet's oldest empire, Google, be reduced to nothing more than a high-volume, low-margin compute layer? Just think about that for a second. The company that literally organized the world's information relegated to just powering the plumbing for someone else's revolution.